Welcome to the Nonprofit Digital Success Podcast, brought to you by wowdigital.com, your best place for nonprofit websites and design, now including fractional CMO support. Want to grow trust online and inspire action across borders? Kimberly Haley-Coleman from Globalware reveals how digital storytelling, volunteer engagement, and a strong website can fuel global impact. Tune in and discover how your nonprofit can turn international goodwill into real-world results. Welcome to the Nonprofit Digital Success Podcast. As usual, I'm David. I'm still David. And in this episode, we're going to be talking all things around volunteerism, trust building online, and digital impact with Kimberly Haley-Coleman. Kimberly is the founder and executive director of Globalware, which is a U.S.-Canada-based nonprofit that mobilizes volunteers for short-term service projects in over 25 countries. She's a multiple patent holder, SMU guest lecturer. She's also deeply engaged with the International Volunteer Programs Association and even holds consultative status with the UN. A little bit of a fun fact here. Kimberly's organization has over 300,000 followers on Facebook. So let's talk about global reach. Kimberly, thank you so much for joining on the show today.
David, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so I guess let's start from the beginning. What inspired you to launch Globalware, and what does volunteering with purpose look like in today's world?
Such a good question. So I've had a very circuitous route to get where I am. Academically, the one thing that was in common in my background, whether it was in the for-profit or nonprofit world or academic world, it was always taking place in other cultures and other countries, other languages. So I have always been drawn to things that kind of take us beyond wherever our home country is. And I was actually working in a for-profit space back in year 2000, a space-related company, and was abroad and was kept over the weekend. And after having already seen all the sites, I was looking to do something more meaningful just to engage my time. And I started calling around, asking Habitat for Humanity, anybody, who can I come and help short term with? And I found that nobody was really set up for short term because the amount of time and cost it takes for someone to oversee you, you're taking them off of wherever their current project and work was. So that was the genesis of it, where I started looking individually to people and how can I help you? What can I do in your life? And when I would come home, tell people what happened, they were almost universally interested and wanted to do something similar. And I found it was just so easy to chat about this and have people want to come and do it with me. And that's when I realized, oh gosh, it's not just me that feels uplifted by this. There are other people. How do we make this happen? And that was happening right about a time where certainly things were going so digital. And that was a big part of our success, actually. Volunteer service roles before that was largely, Peace Corps, church mission trips, and so forth. And so it just so happened that I was getting going at a time when people were looking digital for how do you get involved. So that was a really fortuitous thing for us.
That's amazing, right? Sparking an idea based on happenstance of you looking to do something, and now here we are. How have you translated such a human-centered mission into measurable goals for the digital marketing and web presence?
I have to say that I'm not smart enough in all these things to actually give you as good a detail as our marketing, our website, our social media people are. They're really much more on top of the granular detail for that kind of thing. Because of the space we're in, we're not focused, for example, on how many flags we've planted on the map, right? We're much more focused on the houses that we're building in Kenya. Are they actively being used? Are they serving their purpose? Are people safely and comfortably able to use what we've left behind? And so we do use our digital footprint for this, but in a little bit softer capacity, in that we are sharing. Our volunteers will come for just 1 week, right? So anybody who's signing up, they're there short term, but if they want to stay connected to the community, it's so easy, thankfully, on social media to go back and see, well, what are they doing in Ramate, Guatemala this week, and who's there building, and oh, look, there's Anne, and look, I remember those kids. And so they're staying connected digitally, even though it is also outreach for us. It's a marketing piece. For us, social media is such a huge communication device for us between our volunteers, between the communities, because we're really not heroes to any of these community members. We're partners, we're equal partners working together with them. So this becomes a shared space for us to actively engage everyone in the process to see what's happening in all of our communities.
So giving that social and online presence really is helping to drive the organization forward and keep people connected within, and the volunteers and the communities and all of that. What would you say would be maybe the number one driving factor pushing that?
Goodness. Well, it's funny. There's the intended actions that happen, and then there's the incidental things that happen. And by that, I mean, when volunteers go and serve on our projects and programs, they're obviously really enthusiastic. It's a different culture. They're hearing different music, different food, different background. People are dressed differently. And they're really excited to learn some new thing, whether we're installing concrete floors in the homes of single moms, or we're assembling and distributing wheelchairs for landmine victims. These are almost always something that's not a part of your every day-to-day thing. And since everyone is armed with their phone as a mechanism to stay connected back home and feel safe, but they're also wanting to naturally take photos and share with people back home. Hey, look, we did this today. I met this kid. I met this family. I tried this new food. And so they very naturally want to share that. And our local communities, many of whom operate in places where they don't have phones or even access to electricity and water, sharing that photo real time takes on a different high level of joy factor than you might get at home. If you're talking to a bunch of children that haven't seen a phone before, and you get to take a picture with them and then turn around and show it to. So it's such a natural thing that happens in terms of this digital marketing. I think volunteers don't go there with this in the back of their minds, but when they've finished building something, building a home, of course you're going to want to document this and remember it's a wonderful souvenir. You've left this thing behind. So even though I don't think any of our volunteers go into this thinking, hey, I'm going here to take photos for Instagram, but it is a natural consequence that happens as people go on the programs and they share their experiences. So even though it's not necessarily the intended objective, it's definitely a very natural outcome that people are sharing so much of their experience through social media that it dovetails really nicely with what we're trying to do and set about in terms of letting people know, hey, first of all, it's not all that scary. You can see these people here who have never held a hammer before doing this thing. If they could do it, you could do it, right? And then also getting to see the outcome of being a part of that. So, yeah.
I think that's really amazing and inspiring. And to everybody watching or listening to this episode, think about this for yourselves. How can you get the people that are coming to your programs or your services or attending your events or whatever, what can you do to make them want to capture that and share it online, right? It really lends a lot to credibility of the organization, and it's organic. Right? You're not asking people, hey, we need, 50 volunteers to go to this village, pretend like you're building something and post a bunch of stuff on social. No, they're doing something, they want to remember it, and they want to tell people about it. Like, that's amazing.
And something that has changed a little bit. I'm probably older than most of the people listening to this, but I remember watching TV decades ago, and Sally Struthers would come on, and she was raising money to, support a child in Uganda or whatever. And the chances are that people weren't actually meeting whoever was on the other end of that dollar they were giving. But in this case, it's just the opposite, right? Our world with our programs, we're actually getting to meet and know the same people you're going to see on social media. So it engenders this connectedness in such a natural, powerful way. And that is something that has changed a lot. Back in 1977, people just were not able to stay that connected. And so that social marketing, that digital marketing, as of course there's pros and cons to it, but in our world, it's mostly upside, getting to share that joy. And you're right, to think about it in terms of what are people going to want to share so that they're actually doing the work for you in that sense, right?
Right. And the interesting piece is like, sounds like this whole thing kind of came about organically, right? People are out there, they're on sites, they're doing stuff, they're taking pictures and they're publishing that, right?
That's right.
That's huge credibility for the organization. It's a huge amount of trust. Plus you've got all the additional periphery brand awareness and marketing happening.
Yeah. Well, and we also have, for us, we have lots of different pieces to our digital footprint, and we used to see them as all scattered and unrelated. But as an example, our podcasts we use, our initial thought was we're going to use our podcasts so that people who are going on to our Costa Rica program, for example, they want to know what to pack, what the weather's going to be, if there are any donations, what kind of donations people like, what food to expect, all of those kinds of things, how to fill out your entry requirement forms. And we still have all of that so that if people don't want to read the packet and they just want to listen to it or watch a YouTube video of it, we still have all that. But now, of course, we have interviews with our local coordinators, the local community members, our volunteers, so people can get a day-to-day blog. All of this YouTube video content, this podcast content, you'll see it replicated across our platforms because we've seen that it's all very integrated. The same kind of person who's usually preparing for what is my entry visa look like for Zimbabwe is also super interested to see what did we do in Zimbabwe last week and who's there this week, so they all do fit together. And that was also kind of organic and accidental because we certainly didn't start out 25 years ago with a podcast objective or a YouTube channel. So fortunately, they've all just worked very happily and harmoniously together, mainly being driven by what is the content that is going to serve our volunteers and our local communities. And by starting there as a big part of our mission, it's what bridged the gaps between all of those pieces.
I think one of the key things that you alluded to there that I'm just going to outright say, you need to know your audience, what drives them, what motivates them, what they're interested in, what they're looking for, so that you can give them the information. And you also need to understand what is the format, medium, etc. that works for them. And it sounds like you're producing it in a number of different mediums, which is great because there are learners and people that prefer reading versus video versus photos versus infographics, etc. And being able to provide that content and that insight is working for you.
Yeah. It's certainly changed over the years, although I do think the fact that our largest audience is Facebook says something as well about our demographic as opposed to our TikTok audience. But something that does surprise me is, especially, for the under 30 crowd, they're so much more likely to consume preparatory orientation content via audio podcasts than they are to read a PDF manual that we email them. And even to respond to things that we text to them as opposed to email. So, we do see that our different audiences have different things they respond to. And even though our programs are really designed so that, assuming you've taken care of any sort of entry requirements, whether that's health, a shot or vaccination or any sort of visa, assuming they've gotten past that, almost everything else can wait until you get there and our coordinator walks you through it. That said, we'd certainly rather our volunteers show up as informed as possible. I mean, even just things from cultural sensitivities to setting expectations so that they know, for example, the standard of living, what kind of, we certainly provide running water and electricity and power, but a lot of the communities where we serve don't have those things, and we don't want people really surprised by it. So that we're hoping that through all of those different information sources that they will get enough information so that they won't be negatively surprised by anything, so that what we've been provided ahead of time matches what they see on the ground and they feel less fear, because obviously going into another country, there are all sorts of concerns about whether it's safety or what food they're going to be eating. There's so many factors with travel overseas that this is a very effective medium across all of these avenues to communicate those things and communicate them more quickly than if you were to read them. You can kind of see the environment and you get to see safety. Obviously, a picture is worth 1,000 words kind of thing. So, yeah.
Amazing. All right. So you've welcomed volunteers to 26 countries. How do you capture, or do you even capture, their stories that they're publishing to web and email and social without things feeling like a commercial?
Yeah. So Well, we're really trying to capture both the volunteer serving and the community that we're serving alongside. And so with our podcasts, we're doing interviews on both sides of the hammer, so to speak, so that we're hearing from both sides. And we have a huge tool that facilitates this for us, is that our coordinators who are shepherding the week are bilingual. So they're able to share this information in both languages, so that when we're asking, what does it mean to you to have this wattle and daub style home in Kenya as opposed to the prior format of home you have? And then also asking the volunteers to share, well, what is it like when you're serving alongside this family, and to see how they live and see the difference between these two. What does that do for you? And so, these are all such personal stories. I think so much of this comes down to the specific personality of the people that we are interviewing in terms of how we share it. But because, we actively ask our volunteers to tag us, so that if they are sharing things online, we will see what they've posted so that we can share it. And, there are some limitations that we don't like. I wish Facebook made it easier for us to be able to tag our organization when we see that we've been hashtag referenced, so that when our coordinators post something, if our volunteers have given permission, I wish we could tag them individually, but we really can't do that. So there are limitations, but we are trying to capture that digital storytelling. Usually the lens of our coordinator is guiding that, or our volunteers who are serving who've captured that. And even if they maybe didn't go into it with a mind of, hey, I'm doing this to share a story for GlobalWare, but they're just giving a video saying, hey, look at this, the concrete floor we just finished, this foundation here in Guatemala, and here's the family we've been working with. And they're not doing it for our purposes, they're doing it for their purposes. But that does make it so authentic, right? So in terms of digital storytelling, we've been really fortunate that the specific activities we're doing lend themselves so well for that. And I will say too, an underlying piece of what we do is having fun, right? I mean, we really try and underline that the serving for us, it's not just about helping someone, it's the act of helping, what it does for you selfishly. And so as a source of joy, because we're also, if you go on our Cusco, Peru program, you're going to be helping kids, you're going to be engaged in a park, but you'll also see Machu Picchu one afternoon. There's a bucket list item. We don't want anybody going to any of these project locations and missing the big cultural things. So the fact that they're having fun at the same time they're helping and serving people, there's two big motivating factors that are making them want to share their story. They're having a huge moment of joy and a huge moment of meaning. And these are two very motivating factors in terms of basically proselytizing, in terms of whatever it is you're doing, that these are the kinds of things that make people want to share. This is what I did this week. It's so exciting. It's so fun. I got to meet this kid and play soccer with these people. They sang their national anthem for me. I got to learn how to cook tortillas in Guatemala. It naturally makes people want to create that content and share it. Yeah.
That's awesome. And so you mentioned Facebook, over 300,000 followers, 350,000, somewhere around there. Engagement is a big piece of, I'm sure, the work that you do, right? Trying to I'm going to say recruit, but get people to sign up and participate and be a part of. How does your team approach engagement and growth?
So a shout out to Sika, who's been with us for years and years, she really leads those efforts for us and keeps the conversation going with them. And she notices when people refer to us in their own social media, and we'll engage with them and ask, can we share this, and can we in some way reshare it across other platforms. So really that comes down to our really good people. Also, our coordinators will on site encourage our volunteers to do that. And sometimes it's in some really fun way. There are various memes that will become popular. For a while there was, where everybody's frozen and the camera goes around them. And so we would do that at Machu Picchu or whatever the latest thing is. So we try and have fun in engaging in those kinds of activities. Even if our volunteers aren't thinking to do it, our coordinators often have that in the back of their minds because they know it's a fun way to share and gets people's attention, really.
It's awesome. It sounds like you have a lot of pieces around digital transformation and engagement and organization of your systems and your processes. And a lot of nonprofits struggle with digital transformation. I think that's really just, unfortunately, the truth of the matter. Are there any tools, tech or platforms that have helped you streamline operations and scale the way that you have?
So, we use probably a lot of the same tools that other people use. And, an example is Google ad grants in terms of tracking who is engaged with our website in particular and what kinds of conversion we've had from that. And certainly our web developer and marketing team, they're using, well, we've really gone through lots of different sites and sources and they've changed over time. And those, I totally empathize with nonprofits. We, generally are small and don't have the kinds of margin to really devote a lot of resources. So while we do use various platforms and tools, it's webstats.net, I think is where we have a variety of sources like that. And yet I would still say our most powerful resource online for marketing isn't even the measurement and conversion tools. It's actually just a straight traditional social media, Facebook, and Instagram as well. And in a rising way, our podcasts, because it really wasn't until maybe 5 years ago that we started doing podcasts in the way we're doing it. So I don't know I imagine there are several new platforms we should be using and we're not aware of. But boy, podcasting really has been a great resource for us.
It's amazing. I've got a question for you, a little bit off topic, but what's a story or a moment from the field that really stuck with you?
So I have a whole bunch of them, and it always, well, not always, a lot of times it comes down to seeing the local community interact with whatever project we've just finished or working on. And, one that stayed with me that was from early on was in Cambodia, where we were assembling wheelchairs for landmine victims. And it's usually children that pick up landmines. They're put there during the Vietnam War in Cambodia, and they're neon colored and they're round and they will come to the surface over time. And they've been cleared from the touristy areas like Siem Reap, but in the outlying areas, there's still many there. And then again, it's usually kids that pick them up and they're maimed. They're usually not killed. And so we give them wheelchairs. And I really thought that the moment of looking in a child's eyes at the moment of giving them a wheelchair would be the most impactful part of the program for me. And it wasn't. It was looking at the faces of the parents. These 4 and 5-year-olds often don't have a vision of what their future is going to look like, don't have very specific hopes and dreams, and the parents do. And as a fellow mother with grown children, just looking at someone else who is worried about the future of someone they're responsible for from this human to human perspective, I could not have foreseen how powerful that was going to be. And I do think there's an element of that in all of our projects and programs, and largely because the volunteers have made it that way, right? It's even many times above and beyond anything that we've organized, where the volunteers will be on location and see something else that, those kids are over there playing with trash because they don't have a soccer ball, so they'll buy them a soccer ball, something we didn't ask them to do. And it's these kinds of spontaneous moments that are unscripted that I do think stay with people, just that real human. We're in such a digital world that you can lose sight of what it's like, that high-touch human-to-human reality, particularly in a cubicle, digital corporate environment. It can be easy to lose touch with that humanity. And look, we use a whole lot of digital footprint, and yet at the heart of what we do, it's very human to human. So I have a million memories, but that's one of them.
Amazing. And what's one piece of advice that you've gotten that you would want to pass along to anybody that is listening?
Really not to hesitate. And I think, I don't know, maybe younger people are better at this, but I feel like for a long time, I always thought that, look, I don't know how to do this. This is beyond our capacity. This is more high tech, new tech. I don't understand it, tech. And we would just kind of plow through anyway, knowing that whatever we were doing was imperfect, and then realizing that the people who serve alongside us aren't expecting perfection. And so getting out on these platforms before worrying about being perfect, particularly if you're a nonprofit, what motivates you will show and help you get there, even if you're not perfect. Obviously, there are lots of resources out there, but just not hesitating. Yeah, because there's so many good resources, and you could feel, with AI, with so many things constantly developing, that it's impossible to be on top of all of it. And yeah, but trying anyway, because it's kind of hard to fail as long as you're led by the right things.
Absolutely. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. You don't know if something's going to work unless you've actually gone and you've tried it. And it's not trying it for a week. It's not trying it for a month. You have to give it a bit of time, right? You've got to give it, I don't know, 4 months, 6 months, whatever feels right to you, and understand your gut as well. If you're like, I don't think this is working, stop it, reevaluate, right?
That's right.
Absolutely. Kimberly, these have been some amazing insights, very inspiring conversation, hearing about what you're doing over there and building international impact, using digital tools, the storytelling and the networking. I hope that the folks listening to this show have been able to get some great advice, thoughts, pointers, and maybe a few ideas from the conversation. So I have a challenge. I'm going to challenge you. I want you to issue a challenge to everybody that's listening, something that you want them to do within 24 hours of listening to this episode.
Oh, that's a good question. I'd say if you haven't defined your joy point in your business in terms of what's going to drive joy, not just information and not just utility, spend 24 hours thinking about it while you're working out or driving to work. Where's the joy point? And make sure that that's a part of your mission. Everything will be driven much faster, better, stronger if you've got joy in your mind with it, right?
Love that. That is so great. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, what do they need to do?
Oh, we're anywhere. If you look up Globe Aware, a lot of people think it's Global Aware, but it's Globe Aware. Whether it's our website, our podcast, our YouTube channel, Facebook, all of that, we're at Globe Aware any direction you look.
Amazing. Thanks again so much for joining in, Kimberly. It's been great having you here on the Nonprofit Digital Success Podcast. To everybody listening, if you want any of the links, resources, transcript, video, audio, etc. of this, just head over to our podcast page at nonprofitdigitalsuccess.com. Click on this episode for all the details. And until next time, keep on being successful.
Thank you, David.